why emotional distance might be the beginning of true inner clarity. There comes a moment in life, quiet, unexpected, when you no longer react the way you used to. The arguments that once consumed you now feel hollow. The people you used to chase, you let walk away without a word. And what's most surprising, you don't feel guilty about it. You feel still. That stillness, however, is often misinterpreted. Friends might say you've grown distant. Family might accuse you of becoming indifferent. But deep down, something else is happening. You're not becoming cold, you're becoming conscious. Carl Jung believed that the process of individuation, of becoming a whole and integrated self, required us to confront the parts of our psyche we've ignored. That includes the parts of us that were trained to please, to overextend, to emotionally bleed for others. When we begin withdrawing from those roles, we're not shutting down, we're waking up. This awakening isn't glamorous. It doesn't happen in a single epiphany or meditation retreat. It's a slow detachment from everything false connections, false responsibilities, false versions of yourself. You begin to notice how much of your energy went into managing others' perceptions. You see how your kindness was often currency for acceptance. And when you stop performing, when you simply exist as you are, without apology, without emotional inflation, people get uncomfortable. Because the version of you they knew was never entirely you. It was a patchwork of your deepest fears and their unspoken expectations. Now that you're no longer playing the role, they call you cold. But what they really mean is, you're no longer giving me what I used to take from you. That's not cruelty. That's clarity. The truth is, emotional detachment is often the first sign of emotional wisdom. It means you've stopped tying your self-worth to how well you can rescue, relate, or repair others. You begin to realize that not every conflict requires your input, not every relationship deserves your energy, and not every emotion needs to be expressed to be understood. This doesn't mean you care less, it means you care more selectively. You're learning to preserve your inner world. Jung spoke often about the shadow, the unconscious parts of ourselves we avoid. When we begin integrating the shadow, we become more whole, but also more misunderstood. Integration isn't always easy to watch. It means saying no. It means walking away. It means being seen as selfish when you're finally showing yourself self-respect. And that's the paradox. Growth looks like regression to those who preferred you broken.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
This journey can be lonely. When you stop playing the emotional caretaker, you realize how many people only stayed for the comfort you provided. Not the connection, not the truth, just the comfort. And when comfort disappears, so do they. It's painful. You grieve not just the people, but the illusions. But this grief is sacred. It clears space for alignment. For people who meet you where you are, not where you had to shrink to be loved. So when you feel alone, ask yourself, am I truly abandoned, or am I finally standing in a space that only truth can fill? That loneliness is not punishment. It's preparation. It's the universe making room for authenticity. And authenticity, in a world addicted to facades, is often mistaken for emotional coldness. But it's the warmest thing you can give yourself. So no, you're not cold-hearted. You're not shutting down. You're simplifying. You're conserving energy that was once wasted on proving your worth to people who never questioned their own. You're reclaiming your emotional sovereignty. You're healing in a way that doesn't look like healing to others, because it's not loud, it's not performative, it's quiet, it's calm, it's boundaries. Carl Jung understood that the path to wholeness is not about being more agreeable, it's about being more real. And the real you, that version doesn't overextend. That version doesn't fake smiles. That version doesn't confuse self-sacrifice for love. That version is not cold. That version is finally free. The sacred mirror. Why losing others is how you find yourself. There is a sacred violence in self-discovery. Not the kind that harms others, but the kind that dismantles illusions. When you begin to see yourself clearly, your patterns, your wounds, your needs, you also begin to see the relationships in your life for what they truly are. And often, they crumble. Not because you no longer care, but because you start caring in a different way. You no longer love from lack. You no longer seek validation dressed as connection. Instead, you begin to choose truth over comfort, alignment over attachment. And that's when the losses begin. Friends drift, family members grow distant, romantic partners no longer recognize you. But Jung would remind us, this is necessary. The people who fall away during your awakening were often bound to a version of you that no longer exists. Their leaving isn't a rejection, it's a reflection, a mirror showing you how much you've grown. When you begin to walk the path of individuation, you start to realize how much of your life was built around avoiding abandonment. You said yes when you meant no. You stayed silent when your soul screamed. You overgave, overexplained, overfunctioned, because deep down, you believed love had to be earned through self-sacrifice. But something changes when you understand yourself. You begin to see that love, real love, does not require you to disappear. And so you stop disappearing. You start setting boundaries. You stop overcommitting. You allow people to feel the full weight of their actions without cushioning the consequences. And suddenly, you're not the nice one anymore. You're not the good listener, the reliable fixer. You're just you. And that you, the real you, is enough, but not for everyone. That's the price of authenticity. And it's also the reward. There's a deep grief that comes with this process. Not just the grief of losing people, but the grief of losing who you thought you were. You begin to see how much of your identity was shaped by other people's needs. You were the caretaker, the peacekeeper, the one who held everyone together. And when you let go of those roles, you feel like you're falling apart. But that's because those roles were never you. They were survival mechanisms. Jung wrote that we must let go of the life we have planned so as to accept the life that is waiting for us. That letting go is brutal. It demands that you sit with the silence left behind when the noise of others fades. But in that silence, something sacred emerges, your own voice. And it's quieter than you expected, more tender, more honest, more whole. You realize you've never been cold, you've just been hidden beneath layers of performance. This is the part of the journey no one talks about, the in-between, the space where you're no longer who you were, but not yet who you're becoming. It's lonely, it's disorienting. You question everything. You wonder if you made a mistake. Maybe you should have stayed quiet. Maybe you should have kept pretending. But deep down, something in you knows, this is the way forward, not back. You begin to see yourself not as a role or a title, but as a soul. And that soul is worthy of protection, of peace, of presence. So you keep walking, even when it's hard, even when it hurts. Because every step away from what's false is a step toward what's real. And what's real will not require you to betray yourself. So no, you're not cold-hearted. You're courageous, brave enough to walk away from the familiar in order to honor the truth. Brave enough to disappoint others rather than continue disappointing yourself. Brave enough to lose people because you finally refuse to lose yourself. Carl Jung would say that this is the essence of individuation, becoming who you truly are, no matter the cost. And the cost is real. But so is the reward, because what you gain is not just clarity, not just peace. What you gain is a self that no longer needs to be earned, explained, or sacrificed. You don't need to prove your worth anymore. You simply are. And that is the beginning of everything. The fire and the mirror, how self-knowledge transforms every relationship you'll ever have. There is a moment in every seeker's journey when they realize that knowing themselves changes how they connect with others, not just in what they say, but in what they no longer tolerate. When you deeply understand who you are, you no longer enter relationships from a place of lack. You no longer search for someone to complete you. validate you, or rescue you. Instead, you approach relationships as a whole being, someone who has faced their own darkness and made peace with it. And because of that, your standards shift. Your language softens, but your boundaries sharpen. You become less reactive, but more discerning. You stop trying to be liked and start trying to be understood. And this shift is threatening to those who are still relating to others through their wounds. They might say you've changed, that you've become guarded. But what they're really saying is, I can no longer manipulate the parts of you that used to be unprotected. Carl Jung often emphasized that true connection requires differentiation, that is, two whole individuals meeting, not two incomplete halves fusing in codependency. But many relationships are built on unspoken contracts. I'll hide my truth if you hide yours. I'll pretend to be okay if you don't ask me to change. When you break those contracts, when you begin speaking from your center, those dynamics shatter, and what's left is either real intimacy or real distance. There is no more pretending. You start asking deeper questions. Does this person see my soul or just my utility? And we grow together, or am I just here to make them feel safe in their stagnation? These questions are not cold, they are sacred. They are the questions of someone who has stopped performing and started living. And because of that, your relationships become fewer, but far more fulfilling. You're not interested in popularity anymore. You're interested in resonance. There's something powerful that happens when you stop needing to be understood by everyone. You realize that your energy is a resource, not a responsibility, that your peace is not negotiable. You begin to recognize that not every conflict is worth entering, not every misunderstanding deserves correction. You no longer feel the urge to explain your boundaries because you understand that those who respect you won't need an explanation, and those who don't wouldn't honor it anyway. This is not arrogance. This is self-respect. Jung believed that the goal of therapy, and by extension of life, was not to be good in the conventional sense, but to be whole. And wholeness often looks like contradiction. You can be kind and clear, soft and strong, loving and unapologetic. The more you integrate your inner world, the less approval you seek from the outer one. You begin to live for what is true, not what is convenient. So no, you're not cold-hearted. You're awakened. You've begun the process of becoming truly human. Someone who has walked through fire and emerged not with bitterness, but with wisdom. And that wisdom changes everything. It changes how you speak, how you love, how you leave. It teaches you that sometimes the most compassionate thing you can do is walk away. That sometimes the greatest act of love is a boundary. That sometimes being misunderstood is the price of being real. And you learn to be okay with that, because now you're not chasing understanding, you're standing in it. You're not waiting to be saved, you've saved yourself. And from that place of grounded self-awareness, you begin to build a life that is not only authentic, but sacred. One where your presence is your offering, your truth is your compass, and your heart, no longer up for negotiation, is finally fully your own.